Hello?
Hello, this is Cody.
Hey Cody, it's Jess Ann. It's just you and I. My husband actually is here. He is recording the call so that other board members and one of our commissioners can hear it. If that's okay. I talked to you and I think I got it, and then I try to explain it and I get bumfuzzled. So um, I,
No worries at all. Absolutely
okay,
fine.
thank you. My first question is, how did you define the books that are needing to be removed? And I spent a long time last night looking up words. Gender ideology is, those words are actually in the executive order. And I may pronounce this word wrong, but inculcate or something, which is a step beyond mentoring or teaching. So was that your guideline? I mean, I'm gonna have to have a clear definition, and I see you have books on witches on your list. I love how you did your list. It's very clear why the book was pulled. But did you have a clear definition, or how did you do this? Okay.
So I operated under, so my interpretation of the executive order, and again, there's two, on my list that I sent, there's two columns. There's like under state action, age appropriateness, and then there's another column for the executive order. So I interpret that executive order as being, as saying, hey, look, if you're teaching kids, right, it's because it's all about education. If you're teaching kids that boys can be girls, girls can be boys, or that your gender can change, or it's fluid, or anything like that, that's unacceptable in the federal government's eyes. That's the way I interpret that executive order. So anything that that presents that idea, then I interpret it as being inconsistent with that executive order and should be removed from the library.
Okay. And state action is that just it's inappropriate for that age group, right?
Yes. So that action is okay. Look, again, we should be confusing children. So that again turns into age appropriateness. Children are not prepared developmentally to handle a lot of the material that we are throwing at them. There's some and that age appropriateness test is what we applied, and again, that's following the guidance of the Secretary of State's office. They have a policy. It's probably in your policies already because you had to adopt it as part of the regional library rules. Is that you say we are going to determine the age appropriateness of material. It doesn't matter what the publisher says. We are going to determine what the age appropriateness of material is. So I look at that material, and it is in my mind is clearly not appropriate for children. It's confusing and factually incorrect, and it's inappropriate for children. So under the state age appropriateness standard, it would be to remove those from the children's section and put them in the adult section.
Okay, and so things like witches would do that. What about like Grandpa's camper? I mean, to me it would be confusing to think of two men living alone, but nowhere in that book does it say that they are sexual. It just is implied that they're a same-sex couple.
So that's where we start getting, and I would say even like the witches, the witchcraft stuff, that's where we start getting into really murky.
Okay.
And if a work, for example, if a work taught that, that's a great example. My grandfather has my grandfather's got his friend and they live together. But you have to bring something. So the way I looked at that, and again, this is about using the standard that we've discussed with our attorney, and that standard there's three standards that you can use. You can assume that the library is an absolute an open public forum, and that's like the street, the sidewalk. And you can't limit anyone. That you have to be very allowing. You can't limit much in that if it's that. The other extreme is if it's government speech. If having books on the shelf is government speech. If it's government speech, that's the most allowing you can be. And that's what Little versus Llano County in the Fifth Circuit Court, they ruled that library collections, so what you buy and what you keep in on your library shelves, is government speech. So those judges said, you can do anything you want. As long as you're not discriminating, for example, if you said, I don't want any books written by black people, that would be discrimination. But if you said, hey, I don't want any books that have red dogs in them. I don't like red dogs. I don't like books about witchcraft. I don't think it's good to have books about witchcraft. You could do a lot of things. Hey, I don't want any books about Cuba. I don't like Cuba, and I don't want any books about Cuba. I don't want books about communism. I don't want any books that encourage communism. You can do any of that under Little versus Llano County. But our attorneys told us, they basically said, hey, this is unsettled law. And, hold on one second. So our attorneys told us this is unsettled law. So you could say, hey, we think Llano County is the standard. We think this government speech is the standard. So we're going to take any book out we want. We're just going to take them out and we're going to say sue us. And our attorney said that will 100% be taken. Probably the Supreme Court will probably going to lose all the way up. And the Supreme Court may or may not take it, but it will go all the way to the Supreme Court. So we said, you know what, that, at least this is what I've said, because we didn't really talk about it before, but in my mind, I said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to, I'm not looking to make a fight, right? So the middle road is what we went with. So on the far left would be a public forum, an absolute public forum. On the right would be government speech. In the middle is a limited public forum. And the limited public forum, I'm sure your attorneys have talked to y'all about this, but the limited public forum says, hey, you have some flexibility in what you can remove, but you can't just do it based on the ideas. You can't just say, I don't like what this book is about, so I'm going to take it out of the library. It can't just be because you disagree. So it has to be some other ground, like it's factually incorrect, or it's out of date, or it's poorly produced. You can have other reasons, so you can take stuff out. You just have to have reasons. And when it comes to children's sections, you have a lot more freedom. And age appropriateness is one of those reasons. So you can just say, this is not appropriate for this age. And as long as that's a kind of common sense, as long as that's within the bounds, you can't just say any book about, anything about book about communism is not age appropriate, which I would probably agree with, but that probably would not hold the court.
Okay.
So we end up having to figure out. So that's the logic that I used. So I put together this and said, okay, the executive order has told us this. I don't want to lose federal funding. So the logic for removing this is based on the guidance from the Secretary of State's office and the executive order. But there's also an age appropriateness conversation, and I, I think in the last 2 weeks, the American Plastic Surgeons Association, or whatever that's called, and the American Medical Association have both come out and said, hey, yeah, we're going to stop advising people to do child transitions and prescribing hormones and stuff like that. The federal government has pulled funding for all of those. In the state of Tennessee, it's against the law to do quote unquote gender affirming care. Um, I would argue that that's a bad term for it, but that's what the term some people use. So since it's illegal in the state of Tennessee, then and gender confusion all leads to this. So anytime you start telling a kid a boy could be a girl, that's immediately not age appropriate. So that's the logic I used, and the reason I did it that way is I might be wrong. You know, a judge might say you're wrong about the executive order. You shouldn't take these out of the library. Well, then we've got the fallback position of, okay, well, then put it in the adults, and then we still are protecting children from it.
Well, of course, we talked before, I disagree with that because unless somebody's sitting up there monitoring, then the children will still have access to it. But
And we do, so our library is separated. The children's section is on the first floor and the adult section is the second floor of our main library. And our other libraries have similar but not floor distinctions, but they have similar distinctions between the children's sections on one far side and the far other side is the adult section. So we actually have some quote unquote separation and monitoring that sounds like you guys don't really have.
we are separated, but our legal advisor has seems he doesn't really give any advice, but he did say that that we should go by the term juvenile and not children's, young adult, blah blah blah, but we should go by the term juvenile, which is anybody under 18. So our section have been combined. Okay, I have 2 middle school and 2 high school girls, granddaughters, that are amazing readers, prolific readers. They are reading way beyond what I would think of young adult, and they kind of read half young adult, but then they do read some adult books. So our question here is, how do you keep them from going up those steps to get what they can read if we only have 2 sections? But I'll work that out with our chair before the meeting. What we have said is they need to have a staff person up there monitoring, and they say they don't have enough staff. Well, they do. And we've said, well, then keep them in a cabinet. Well, they don't have room for a cabinet, which they do. So that's where we're at with that. But anyway, that's just an Anderson County problem. You don't need to be bothered with that. But yeah, anyway, you've got your plate full. All right, let's see.
Are y'all having a lot of people attend your meetings?
We had so many 3 years ago when this started coming up that and they were borderline violent. I really thought a man had a gun at a meeting, and it was one of the board members, and he got in the face of a commissioner. There was yelling and shouting. He went to his car. He is ex-military. I really thought he was going to get a gun. He did not, but he came back and continued to scream. We had a chair that I don't think he knew how to use a gavel. He let the meetings get out of hand. We have had, since Hargett's letter, the first meeting, we had people that were aware of Hargett's letter, which was the liberals on the board and community members. The letter did not go out to our chair, who was new, or our board. So we went in cold. Well, he allowed speakers from the audience to speak, but it was very calm. Well, we are expecting a zillion people at this next meeting, because that's what we're hearing in the community. Basically, our churches have not helped. My own church, which is huge, and my preacher will preach from the pulpit, you know, what's biblically correct, but then my church doesn't seem to get out in the community and support that with their presence and their words. But on a good note, our current chair is a county commissioner, and he is also over our county jail. I think he probably carries all the time, and he is not afraid to use his gavel. So I do think he will keep it under control, and if it does get out of control, I think he will call in some support.
Yeah, we at this point have to have law enforcement at all our meetings.
Uh,
And we had 4 people escorted out for just being disruptive last week, or yeah, in our last meeting. And and they were kind of threatening me, yelling and screaming at me directly. As I've told you, I'm a pastor, so I'm used to people hating me for what I say. I totally understand that. It comes with territory. And I also understand your struggle getting churches involved. It is very hard. It's something I am struggling with here, which is frustrating. But I will pray that you have success and that the church comes and participates and shows that these fringe ideas are just that. They are fringe, and they're not held by the majority, no one close to it.
Well, the Unitarian Church comes, the crazy churches come, and they are really loud and very rude, and you can just about pick them out in the crowd because they are, they're off the wall, they're nuts, but I do appreciate your prayer, because when all the dust settles, we can have security there, we can have whatever, but prayer is our only weapon in this fight. It really is. So even the people that aren't brave enough to come, I do think we have people that are supporting us with prayer, and I appreciate your prayers. Okay, let me see what else. I have a list here. There's only 4. Was there what was your timeline? Because we're obviously both of us behind the Hargett's timeline. We filed for an extension, but so you asked first for the librarians to go through their books, and then you had a vote, or you're having a vote. So how much did you give them till the next meeting? And
so we originally got the letter, I think it was Halloween, end of October, and I met with the library director, and at that point we still had a good relationship. We do not anymore. It's kind of fallen apart incredibly. But the lady that's the executive director said we need to do this. We need to close our 2 largest branches for a week each, and I authorized that. Now, in hindsight, I think that was a political ploy to make this a bigger deal than it needed to be. So they closed the libraries for a week each. They did this review. They came back and they and she had a quote-unquote report. We thought she was presenting a list in December. That was the plan. Our December meeting, she was supposed to present this list and we're supposed to act on it. Well, December meeting came and she said, here's my report. We're still going through stuff. And we said, okay, well, we've got to act on this. And so we put it off till our February 2nd meeting. We asked the Secretary of State to give us a 4-day extension so that meeting would be inside, give us time after the meeting, write the report. And we told her, have this done by the end of December. And we told her to do it in a Google document that we could see as they worked on it, so that we could begin our research immediately. So they finished that before December 30th. We had basically 30 days, had a month to do what we needed to do. So I checked out several hundred books and reviewed them. I think it was 600 or something like that. But the library staff intentionally put books on there that had no business being on there, trying to make the list as big as possible so that they, again, could play to the media. And we had the ACLU talking about releasing press releases. The Rutherford County Library Board wants to remove 2,700 books. We didn't put that list together. The staff did. And then we also we told her that by the December 30th, we had to have her recommendations for each book. So she gave recommendations per book. Of the 2,700 books that the library board identified and said these were borderline, we need the board to make a decision on them. The staff themselves acknowledged that 450 of the books were in the children's section inappropriately and should be in either the young adult or the adult section, most in the young adult. And so in our meeting in February 2nd, our meeting, we adopted, we acted on, we accepted the recommendation of staff for those books. And then we presented our own lists for action. And then we're going to act on those in the next meeting, our March meeting. And then I sent a letter to the Secretary of State, because we sent our report to the Secretary of State and said, hey, thank you for this. It identified 400, our staff identified 450 books that they believed were in the inappropriate section that we moved. And I really appreciate your help with us as we continue to try to make our library safer for children. And I even said in the letter, we continue to review, we are continuing, there may be future actions based on this review. And that's what we're going to do next. That's what we're going to be discussing our next meeting. So 3 board members have presented their own lists of books. I sent 2 of those to you. The other one I've not gotten yet. And those are books that, and it's interesting because there's stuff I missed. There's a lot of books, right? So there's stuff I missed. There's stuff other people have come to me and said, man, I'm glad you saw that in that book. I didn't see that. So it really is a team effort. And regrettably, it's falling on the board members. Our library staff has 30-something employees, and they can't. They're putting Harriet Tubman and little potty books like, Jenny Goes to the Potty. They're putting those on there and saying child nudity, where it's the bottom where the kid says they're going potty. But then they're not recommending these books that have like sex, that show penetration in them. They're not talking about those. So it's pretty ridiculous.
Okay, now you, it looks like you're close to having a final list. So that list will be presented at a board meeting, I'm assuming, and will you vote on it as a list? I mean, I don't know how you could vote book by book. I'm thinking that the list would be presented, and that if any board member objective, they would make I don't know. How do you plan on voting on the books?
But we have to vote on this list. I mean, my list is nearly 200 books on it. If we were to vote one by one, it's been 5 minutes per book.
I know.
That would be 1,000 minutes.
Yep.
So there's some push the public. So what's interesting is the opposition, the people. It's our Democratic Republic, our Rutherford County Democratic Party, and then there's also a group of socialists. There's a socialist group here and a couple other groups. They are, some of them are just adamantly against everything. But then recently, it's been interesting. There's been a little turn. I think they realized the makeup of the board. So there's been a turn to where now they're just starting to disrupt. They're not opposing. So they're saying things like, hey, look, I get some of these books might need to be moved, but you need to discuss these one by one. But there's no way. We just don't have logistically. That's not possible. So we adopted the recommendations of staff in one big list. So we acted on 450 books with one vote. And that's the logic I'm going to use in the next meeting too. I'm going to say, look, there's no way we can do this one by one. And we made these changes based on, the staff had a list, and we voted on that list all at one time. There's no difference with the board reviewing this list and voting on it all at one time.
Okay, the staff list had some goofy books on there. So when you voted on it as an entire staff list, how did that work?
They made recommendations.
Oh,
So
okay.
they recommended moving 450 of the 2,700.
Okay. Oh, okay, I see. I've got the process down. So we have a meeting Thursday. This probably will not all happen Thursday. I mean, it's gonna be 2 or 3, we meet monthly. So it sounds
We do,
like
yeah.
it's gonna be, a little while. Okay, I'd like to tell you, you will never hear from me again, but I think you probably will, because this is a
Feel
lot.
free.
Okay.
Feel free to call me. Yeah, feel free to call me or text me. And I would really encourage you, the Secretary of State's letter is really clear that the executive director of your library or the library manager, whoever's in charge, is supposed to make a recommendation to you. So I would make very, very clear, hey, where's your recommendation? Because what I have been told by some other library boards is they're getting presented lists but no recommendation.
Yeah.
And so I would encourage you to hold tight to that and tell your library staff, give us a recommendation on this action. And that will also tell you, are they doing their job? And then that may actually be a reason for you to terminate them. If they refuse to do their job, you should terminate them.
Our biggest library, the librarian has had multiple complaints against her for years, and she seems to have the talent to walk the gray line. And there's faces and walking in and out of meetings and all kinds of things she does, but we're just accumulating stuff. Honestly, I wish she would not give us the list. And that would definitely be insubordination.
Well, I mean, is this the meeting where you were expecting the list, your next meeting?
No, this is our initial meeting to say, this is how we're defining it. That's why I wanted to be clear, I understood that. And a motion will be made to start this process. And I'm gonna spend some serious time trying to figure out exactly how this motion can be simple, but cover everything it needs to cover.
Have you specifically kind of on the record in a meeting said, hey, the fact that some of the board didn't get these notification of this letter is inappropriate, and in the future, you should consider this a reprimand, and in the future, you should make sure all official communication should come from the Secretary of State's office should go to all board members?
No, we haven't said it that strong. And what they did is also walk in the gray line. They are required to give us a report every month. Well, it's goofy stuff. We had a bake sale. We had parents come in for child night. And so, I glanced at that thing, but one of the bullets was a letter from Trey Hargett's office. Well, there's 9 board members and nobody was like, what? Let me call about that. Where it should have been letter from Secretary Hargett's office asking for review of books appropriateness, or something like that. And then I would have well, where is this letter? I didn't get this letter. What's going on here? So no. Now I have called Mr. Hargett's, and I have called, I can't ever think of his name, but the guy over libraries for the state. And their secretaries are real nice, but these people are not gonna call you back, ever. I've called them, people from my community have called them, they will not call you back. The best I've got is they recommended our area state representative contact me, and he is way out there liberal, and in my mind, so is every librarian in the nation. And he just kind of poo-pooed it away, you know. Those librarians weren't keeping that from you, you know. I don't know why you didn't get it, blah, blah, blah. But you're right, we need stronger language. So, yeah.
Well, like I said, feel free to call me if you get any questions in the future, okay?
Okay, thank you so much for your time. Take
All
care.
right, take
Bye-bye.
care.
Hey, Charlotte.
Through some of that list on there, some of those books that it just so disgusts me. There was one for ages 3 to 6 that had to be moved to an adult. I'm like, what in the world? Why does a 3 to 6 year old need to know its gender? What was it? It was gender identity for a 3 to 6 year old. That's just too much.
Listen, I've spent hours and hours on this now, and I've got definitions that we're gonna have to use in the meeting, definitions of gender ideology, gender identity, gender expression, gender confusion. And I just got off the phone with Mr. York, and my big question is, how did you define the books that needed to be removed? Because I can see that he removed some books about witches and things like that. Wait a minute, let me, John, wait a minute, how do I do this?